I'm live. It says excellent connection. I see there are some people waiting, so yeah, we're gonna quickly get into hands. For if anyone here doesn't know me, I'm Alexandra. I'm a mid-stakes cash game player and the coach for FNC Poker. Check out our other YouTube videos. And yeah, I do this weekly stream where I ask for hands in our Discord community. You can find the link in the description and join if you want to send hands for the previous streams. Me and Paul also run a small CFP, and soon we're going to launch a bootcamp, so yeah, that's going to be quite good value for money. Stay tuned for that. These are some hands that a member of our community sent. Unfortunately, I had some technical issues before the stream and didn't manage to put all hands into the same database, so we're gonna go through these hands. There are like 3 or 4 hands, and then if it's not enough, we're gonna continue with others. So we go for an open MP with 9s, which seems just standard to me. And we face a big 3-bet from cutoff, which is already a bit alarming. I don't really know who these players are. In general, this size should not be used. It can be used exploitatively if we think, out of position under 4 bets and finds calls, because what should happen against this size is that we should only 4 bet or fold and not really have any calls. Now, that small blind calls here, I definitely think this guy will be a recreational, and we are also deep with him, so there can be arguments made for calling, especially if he's that kind of super wild recreational, and yeah, we have a chance to get his whole stack in, and we also close the action, so it's not like imposition can do anything about it. On the other hand, it's obviously not really nice to be sandwiched between 2 people. So yeah, all in all, I think what this depends on is how big this recreational in the small blind is and how big we expect his loss rate to be. Okay, we call and the board is very low. It goes check check, which I like. I don't think we should really donk here. It might make some sense, but yeah, usually not a play I would do. This guy bets half pot and this guy folds. At this point, again, we're not really happy here with 9s. We're basically not really beating any of his value hands. Even though we have an overpair, there's something to keep in mind. And also it's a hand that needs a lot of protection. If this guy finds a range bet here, which I definitely don't think he will. We are 3 ways on a low board and he's in position. He can just check back, realize equity. Maybe it's check raising would make some sense, but in general, this is just a middling hand at this point. And if we check raise, we should want to get some thin value and protection. It's really hard to get thin value with this hand. I don't think people bet call here 3 ways, something like ace king very often. So I guess we can call here once, but I wouldn't really do anything else. There's the 6, goes check check. Now we have to think about villain's range. How likely is he to check back, a strong hand here, like an overpair? And I think on a run out like this, it's not that unlikely, as if we saw a complete blank on the turn. On the other hand, it is possible he just bets like ace king, ace queen, king queen, whatever, queen jack, or king 10, whatever he 3 bets, and now assumes this is not a very good card for him, which is not, and decides to check back. So I don't think he's completely capped in this spot. And by the river, yeah, now an 8 makes a straight. I don't think he's gonna have an 8 here very often, and again, it's a very good board for us, so we could have, especially in this configuration with this villain here, we could pretty much have sets here. We can have stuff like 7, 8, 8, 9, maybe not that often, but yeah, our range is doing quite good here, so I wouldn't be surprised if we can actually, yeah. I was saying, I guess we can value bet quite thin, but 9s here, I don't think this is a spot where we just get called by ace highs. Maybe in theory he should find some of these calls. I don't think they actually do in practice too much, so yeah, maybe this is a bit too thin. But I also think if we check, he won't really find a lot of bluffs on these runouts. This is like, these runouts are generally quite underbluffed. Um, although, now seeing this, it gets very weird because I don't think he's going to 3-bet very often and then check back the turn with a lot of attacks or any set or two pairs. And when he bets these sides, I'm not sure he's wrapping an overpair anymore, although he might choose these sides if he thinks we'll always bet better on the river, which we probably should. So yeah, I mean, I could get behind the call here. It really depends on reads. I don't think he has a lot of value hands that are consistent to his size here. And because of that, I might get behind the call. But in general, this is not a texture I would be looking to call very wide. Yeah, quite a weird hand. If this is not an anonymous field, or if you play in a small field against this guy a lot, it might be worth calling for the info. I think it's definitely a close spot, and in general, I would advise, over bluffing to this kind of sizing, but here, yeah, not exactly sure what to make out of his range. Next hand, we open queens on the MP. We get called by two people in position, which makes me think at least this one is probably not a great rag. We shouldn't have many calls from the cutoff, if any. So yeah, maybe the guy is a recreational and the button could flat. If that's the case, the button could flat here a bit more often because he wants to play in position more spots against the recreational. And yeah, we don't have much info on any of them. We can probably assume a small blind is a recreational too. I'm not sure. Maybe this is a secluded field, so it might be a softer field than usual. Facing this donk from the big blind with from the small blind with queens, I definitely want to raise. I mean, 4 ways, this is still a strong enough hand, but it does need protection. We'd rather play heads up in position against the recreational than, just calling here, losing value, and going to the turn with another 2 ranges with a lot of equity. So yeah, I think just calling here would be a mistake, which we do. And now cut off raises, call. Yeah, this is a really weird spot, and I would want to be the aggressor here, because as I said, I think my hand is strong enough, but like if I raise and then he 3-bets, then it gets a bit trickier. Now, I don't think we can fold queens here yet, because against a big blind, one big blind donk and another call, a strong jack here still feels like a very strong hand, so I think we can still beat value, and then there's a bunch of draws available, 6-5, 9-10, 8-9 with backdoor flash draws maybe, and I'm not saying those hands should necessarily be called here, but if we're playing against recreationals or weaker players, we can't really exclude those hands from their range. So because of that, I would call. But like, I think I've talked about this a lot in the previous streams. It's hard to talk about the spot where we shouldn't be in the first place because we made a mistake earlier in the hand. And I think not raising flop is actually a mistake here. So we shouldn't really be in this spot. Okay, we call. 5-6 now gets there. He bets a very small size again. Like, to me, this screams mergy hand that is afraid to face a bigger bet. But yeah, considering the action behind us, I think now queens is a bit too weak to raise. Obviously, we can't fold, but I expect another raise maybe quite often. This is nice for us, and now we also beat some 2 pairs. Like, again, shouldn't be in the ranges, but if they are recreationals, they might. Okay, at this point, I would just fold. Yeah, I think this is, the obvious situation. Hola, Jose. The obvious situation where they just give their hand away. Like, of course, now we know we're playing against the recreational here. Like, that's a terrible flat on the button. It's a terrible continue on the flop as well. But yeah, he gets there on the river, he just shoves. I know the 4 doesn't really or shouldn't really improve his range, but like when he just bats over pot deep into like he's extremely deep with all these other people, and he just goes for it on the river. I think that's a very very obvious sizing tell. I'm not sure what his timing was either. That might also be relevant in the hand, but yes, I would definitely fold here. I think this is burning money. Wah wah wah. Okay. Pro tip: deep stack is a tell that he's running hot. Yes, yes, especially if you know he's a recreational, although it's not always like that. There are exceptions where someone plays, more tables and just wins a bunch of stacks at one of them, but yeah, generally I agree with you, and it's true that recreationals tend to get a bit tighter and not as crazy when they run hot and they've already won a few stacks. So I think that's a really good pro tip, Jack Swagger. Thanks for that. Kind of home game hand. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think it's some US field where only the people in that state are allowed to play. So yeah, anyone can give me American identity, please? Okay, let's go next hand. Cutoff opens 3 big blinds and we call with ace jack offsuit, which I like. One thing I would like to mention is that assuming someone opens with the same range, so a 3 big blind is not stronger than a 2 big blind range, we definitely want to start 3-betting more against the bigger size compared to calling, and vice versa against the smaller size. If anyone has insights on why that is, yeah, I'm waiting for them in the chat. Yeah, well, even if it was a joke, I think there's actually a lot of truth to it. I had a friend. We were reviewing hands together, and he was always asking me, "How was this guy running? How was this guy running? Did he win the next hand?" And I was like, "Why does it matter?" And he was like, "No, believe me, it matters a lot with recreationals." And then after I started observing the patterns, it was sick how maybe even some like 70, 30, 20 guy when he had a big stack, he just started value betting only and dropping the bluffs, and then he was losing 1 or 2 stacks and was getting everything in because he was tilted. Like, that's a very common pattern with these people. Okay, I like just the call here, although against the 3 big blind, I mean, yeah, I think I'm taking those words back. Again, I'm not sure if you're using a HUD or if you have any stats on this guy, but the fact that he has a broken stack and just the fact that apparently it seems like the recreational to rag ratio on this site is surprisingly skewed towards rags. Yeah, I think this guy is a recreational, so when he opens 3x, I think there's definitely this turns into a value 3-bet. If we were against a regular, yeah, I think it's mostly a call, but against recreationals with wide ranges that are also going to make huge mistakes post-flop, we definitely want to shift towards 3-betting this hand. Unless we know, we have some reads that he opens a strong range here for some reason. We check, he goes for a half pot bet, and I think, again, here, this is probably a mandatory check raise against the recreational. Even against regs, we should check raise this quite often. But yeah, I think we're just losing value if we don't check raise here. And because they tend to be quite inelastic to sizes, I would probably make it like 12, 13 big blinds. But yeah, I like that we found the check raise anyway. There's an ace of diamonds, which is quite interesting because I would say this is quite a good turn for us because, of course, we're going to check raise some ace jack, but also we are going to check raise flash draws, a lot of low flash draws. That are not necessarily blocked by the board, and the fact that there are 2 flash broadways on the board really is in positions disadvantage because most of his flashes especially the ones that are exclusive to his range, are going to contain ace x or jack x of diamonds. So now we have more flushes. We are gonna have some ace jack. Because of that, I think we can continue betting here quite often and thin. At least that's what happens on most flash turns. On an ace, some things might change a bit because we might want to turn a bit more polar because we don't want to value bet jack x anymore, or random 8x with a backdoor if we ever have that. But yeah, I think whatever strategy you use, ace jack is going to be strong enough to bet here. I like the small size. I think it's a good way to construct your strategy. I think we can actually look into the solver a bit after this end and see how this turn is supposed to be played, because yeah, I think it's quite interesting. And now the river being a 10, I mean, I don't think he's gonna have queen 9 all that often unless he has a backdoor flush draw to go with it. King queen with a backdoor he might have, so yeah, I don't think this is an extremely good river for us. Is ace jack strong enough to keep betting here? So he can definitely have flushes. We kind of block sets, but he could have some of those too. He could have some king queen. Yeah, I think this will be close. I don't think this is the kind of spot where we want to value bet super thin anymore. So we might want to start using a bigger size and maybe drop the thinner value bets. Still, we beat stuff like ace 8, which is 2 pair. Although if we bet polar, ace 8 is quite a weak hand. I think this is actually quite interesting. What do you guys think? We're gonna dive into the solver a little bit. But yeah, maybe before we see the response, you can give me some insights. What? GTO Wizard is unreachable? What's going on? Sorry guys, it's doing some weird stuff sometimes. Oops, sorry, not this. Okay. We might not dive into the solver to see what's happening with this hand, but if you people are curious, let me know here or in the comments for the ones who watch later. And I might make a video on it. Okay, well, I'm quite disappointed. GTO Wizard does not work. So let's see what happens. We go for a check and he bets 30 big blinds. Yeah, I don't think... I think this is quite close. I think if this guy is a recreational, I don't really want to fold. But I'm also not really happy calling it. Sorry, going back to the hand. So yeah, I don't really want to fold, but not very happy calling either. If this guy is recreational, if he's a reg, I think folding is reasonable. You were distracted. Yes, you are a bad student. Okay, so yeah, because of this, I like the call. And because of this, I also really like 3-betting pre-flop. Again, the broken stack is a very good indicator. Our player is a recreational. So yeah, I wouldn't fold and I will 3-bet. Did we go through 4 hands already? What was this one? Oh, we didn't see this one. Are the regs under bluffing? That's actually a very good question. They are under bluffing as a population. So if you look at mass database analysis and check population tendencies, you will see that the regs are under bluffing. Although what we need to understand is that, that's basically an average of regulars. So, and it's also going to reflect the regs that play the most, which are mostly going to be rakeback grinders that play quite passively. So even though as a population they do underbluff, there are regs who will definitely overbluff certain spots, and that's why, it's quite important to go over the database analysis. To go beyond the database analysis and try to spot actual tendencies of real people, try to make notes and try to understand how they think about the game. Okay, we open Jack 9 suited on the button and we get called by the big blind. We flop a flash draw on 10-6-3. Again, this board is still quite good for us. Our overpairs are very strong. We're gonna have more 10x and better 10x in our range. We have all the sets from the button and a lot of strong draws. So personally, I would go for a big polar size here for maybe pot or 3/4. But I could get behind, strategies constructed around smaller sizes. I think population will still do a lot of mistakes against the smaller sizes too. So yeah, personally, I would bet big here if I do decide to bet. And I think Jack 9 is quite a nice hand to bet. It doesn't have a lot of showdown, so we don't want to just check it back to showdown. It has nice backdoors because, yeah, obviously we have a flash draw, but it also has nice backdoor flash draws. We don't want to bet all of the flash draws here that we have. So we need to be selective in a way, and obviously when we also hold the backdoor straight draw and we don't really we can't really win at showdown, those are good reasons to bet. So I wouldn't mind checking this back at a low frequency, but I would mostly bet it. Turn is a 7 and we face an overbet. Now we do have a combo draw, and generally if you bet smaller we want to have some raises against the turn bet, but the rule is the more mergy a range is, the more we want to raise. So a mergy range would have here, would bet some 7x, would bet some maybe 6x with gut shot and stuff like that. If he went for something like 40% pot size, maybe even for 3/4, he can value bet a bit thinner here. But when he goes for an overbet, he says he's very polar, so he's gonna have bluffs and he's going to have very strong value hands. Against a range that looks like that, raising is not that efficient anymore, right? Because we're gonna get the nutted hands to call and we're gonna get the terrible bluffs to fold. Therefore, we just want to mostly call here. I don't think I'll have much of a raising range. Maybe some low frequency constructed around 8, 9, and 7s, which are strong enough to raise here, I guess. Maybe 4, 5. But yeah, I would just call. River's a king, and he goes for an overbet. I would just fold at this point. Yeah, I wasn't sure what's going to happen. I don't think there is much to think about this hand. When we think about what to bet on the flop and we have a flash draw, it's nice to try to be a bit selective about them and think about the properties. What do we want to bet, what don't we want to bet, and I think this has nice properties to bet, although I don't think checking it sometimes is necessarily a mistake. You were monitoring, Jack Swagger says he was monitoring bluffs between regs and regs at small stakes PLO. Regs were out bluffing the regs 10 to 1. The regs were just not bluffing and the regs were over bluffing wildly. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because the recreationals are going to have very, very wide ranges pre-flop, right? And when they have very wide ranges, what that means is that in every spot they are going to basically have they are going to have way more bluff candidates, right? So it is quite obvious that they are going to bluff more than the regs do. Now, yeah, again, if you monitor it like that, the majority of the pool is going to be under bluffing, of course, but that doesn't mean we're not gonna have some regs that will be over bluffing. I have some other tag hands here. The only problem is that is I might have reviewed them in a previous session. Okay, well, has anyone... I said raising 8-9 suited on the turn. What are your bluffs? Well, I can't pull up the hand again, unfortunately. Sorry for that, because I changed the database. But it doesn't... The answer is it doesn't really matter what our bluffs are, because we were playing against a recreational, right? When we play against a recreational, what we are trying to accomplish, it's getting max value. Oops. It's getting max value with our hand, because they are not going to know if we're balanced or not. They're not going to stay and bluff and count our... Oh, sorry, that hand wasn't against the recreational with 8-9. Yeah, so against the regular, I'm not exactly sure what the runout was. Do you remember? But yeah, you can definitely raise something that blocks some of his value while also having some equity. So I imagine if we ever want to bluff there, it's going to be a low pair plus a straight blocker, because that blocks sets and also blocks straights. And if he has, some hands that call, we can actually sometimes improve against them. But again, against an overbet there, I'd rather not have a raising range at all than having to think about, the 3 or 4% of my range that wants to raise there. 10-7 deuce 6. So yeah, maybe some 6. Wasn't it 10-7 3? I think it was 10-7 3. Yeah, it was 10-7 3, because I think 4-5 was also a straight. So yeah, I guess something like 6-5, 6-4 would make sense to raise as a bluff from time to time. But again, that's not really something I would overcomplicate my mind with. I think just not having raises against an overbet there is good enough. Like, we don't have to implement the raising range. If we did, though, for a very low frequency, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. Can you run a meaningful database analysis on an anonymized pool, or is it pointless? I would say it's quite pointless, because you'll want to be able to differentiate regulars from recreationals, and in an anonymized pool you can't really do that, right? So because of that, I would say it's not the greatest. Okay, let's do this, the last hand. I was planning to use it for a new video on YouTube, so if you like and subscribe, you might see what I replaced it with, because I don't want to recycle hand. So this player lost 2k after 12k hands. Have you discussed this? Which player? What are you talking about? So yeah, this is going to be a very, very simple hand, where I was playing against a recreational that was very, very passive and quite stationy. So I decided to go for a bet on the flop, even though this might not seem, I don't know that it makes much sense, but I guess these kind of players, we have to value bet really, really thin, because what happens is if we check back, they won't really bluff us, and they are quite stationary, right? So if we bet this, they are going to call us with so many worse hands, they are not going to check raise. So I think this hand can actually be a 2 streets value bet against a guy like this. Yeah, so on this run out, I don't want to bet again, but I think if this was a complete blank, we can actually value bet ace king here again. So yeah, this was about value betting thin, but I thought it's gonna be a double barrel somewhere, and I'm surprised it's not. I think we can actually even barrel the turn because there are still so many deuce 5, ace deuce, 6 5, flush draws, jack 10, I don't know, jack 8, whatnot, that can continue calling. So yeah, against this profile, I wouldn't actually rule out the value bet on the turn. Um, but yeah, it's a boring hand. Oh, I clicked his stats by accident. Well, yeah, that's actually a combination of my hands and someone else's, and some students' hands that I just put in a database for reviewing, and I usually mark them before the stream, but this time I didn't. So yeah, losing 2k in 12k hands is actually, depending on the stakes you play, it's actually something that's gonna happen to everyone. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys ever played a bit with Prime Dope variance calculator, and you can see that around on 12k hands you can have quite bad downswings even if you're like a really consistent winner in terms of big blinds per 100. So yeah, 12k hands is actually not a lot of time, and what in 200 NL that's 10 buy-ins. I mean, you can lose 10 buy-ins in a session if you run bad. So yeah, I don't think it says much about anyone's stat or yeah, the way they play. I'm not Polish, although I'm from Eastern Europe. Maybe that's why my accent sounds like that. I'm actually from Romania. Okay, I guess I'm going to wrap up the stream with this hand. Thanks for everyone who joined. Again, feel welcome to join our Discord that is should be in the description of this stream or our other videos. You can go check out our other videos if you can find it. And yeah, I always use ask for hands from our community members to send for the streams. So if you want your hands to, be reviewed, or if you're interested in our CFP or other training programs, yeah, feel free to join and you'll always find details there. Taking the eye too. I got busted. Okay, guys. Yeah, thanks for joining again, and I hope to see you on the future.